There is one game we all play, and that game is called real life. Not everyone is good at it, but some of us are. Real life is an open world game with endless possibilities. And after all, only the uncultured spend their day-to-day life in just one country. So join me in my life of leisure as I explore the best games for the handheld around the world.
I am on a long journey across the United States, and this week I find myself in Denver, Colorado. Instantly, the location conjures up memories of the South Park television series. This brought two questions to my attention. Firstly, is South Park a real place? And secondly, is there a South Park handheld game? It turns out the answer to both these questions was yes, and I have interesting facts to bring to you regarding both. Before we visit the real-life town of South Park, let's talk about the handheld game. I am sure we all remember the South Park first-person shooter released on the Nintendo 64 back in 1998. The game was a bit rubbish really, but at least it let us play as the crude, humoured, popular characters we were seeing on television every week. In some ways the game was good fun at the time. So, you may know about the South Park game for the Nintendo 64, but what many people wouldn't know was that this technically was not the first ever South Park game. The first ever South Park game was in fact developed for the Game Boy Color. Like the Nintendo 64 game, South Park for Game Boy Color was developed by Acclaim Studios. Sadly, however, the game was never released, as the game got nixed by the show creators Trey Parker and Matt Stone. The South Park creators cancelled the game due to them feeling that they thought the game was an ill fit for the handheld system. At the time, the Game Boy was mainly played by children, so therefore they decided that it would be difficult to hit the right demographics with the game. Regarding the game itself, there is one single screenshot of it which was published in the old Nintendo Power magazine. Apparently the prototype cartridge of the game still exists to this day and is in the hands of Matt and Trey. They allegedly still have it as a memento to commemorate the first ever South Park game. It is interesting to speculate what the value of this game would be if it ever fell into the hands of collectors. I'd buy that for $1. Anyway, despite there only being one copy of the game in existence, you can still play the bloody game anyway. Greedy developers Acclaim did not want their half-assed work to go to waste, you see. So in Europe they changed all the sprites to characters from a German children's cartoon and named the game May of the Bee and Friends. Instead, and even more hilariously in the United States, they changed the sprites yet again and published the game as The New Adventures of Mary Kate and Ashley. Fancy that, ladies and gentlemen. The first ever South Park game was eventually released as Mary Kate and Ashley, pretty much proving in my opinion the game was no more than a quick cash grab anyway. If they could chop and change the theme of the game that easily, it must have been underwhelming. So, if you want to play the first South Park game, grab yourself a copy of The New Adventures of Mary Kate and Ashley. Yeah! Anyway, now we have talked about the first ever South Park game, let's get on to the main event. Let us talk about the real place of South Park. South Park is in fact a grassland flat formed between mountains. South Park is approximately 10,000 feet from sea level and located within central Colorado. It encompasses around 1,000 square miles around the headwater of South Platte River in Park County. By now you're probably thinking a bloody boring grassland flat doesn't really relate that well to the hilarious fictitious town from the TV series, but do not worry, I am getting there. Within South Park, the largest town in the basin is known as Fairplay and has a whopping population of 610 people. Fair play, mate! As soon as you arrive in Fairplay, you will start noticing that the buildings and mountain ranges have a shocking resemblance to the TV series. But after only about 10 minutes of exploring the tiny town, I hit the bloody motherlode. I found a long street within Fairplay with a 1950s open-air museum on it, known as South Park City, All my dreams had come true, and I had stumbled across an area which looked pretty much identical to the South Park in which we've all seen on television. The buildings, the mountains, everything looked familiar from the TV show. Even the people of the town all appeared to be very nice. There were friendly faces everywhere and humble folk without temptation. Normally, when you go somewhere random inspired by something you have seen on television, on the whole, I have found doing this to normally be a massive letdown. South Park, on the other hand, blew me away by how different it was to most of America I have seen. I really felt like I had fallen into an alternative universe and had left all my woes behind. My only disappointment with this location was that I thought the locals could capitalise much further off the show's success. I had to go into several stores before I could even find a bloody woolly hat. There was hardly any merch from the show for sale in the town, where I feel if the town was marketed properly, they could turn this destination into a tourist hotbed. If I was in charge of this town, I would be selling chocolate salty balls, I would be opening a Casa Bonita, a lesbian bar, the lot. The possibilities are bloody endless, but I suppose for humble folk without temptation, maybe natural South Park is enough. Cheerio! Thank you for watching today's episode, and massive thank you to my patrons for supporting this channel, including Mad Ape Productions and Jarrett Tolzian. Everyone's continued support makes life feel, just that little bit less futile. Yeah! If you're new to my channel, subscribe and check out some of my other videos. Ta-ta and farewell!